Coming up, Huw Edwards avoids prison after admitting accessing indecent images of children, one as young as 7 years old. It's a shocking fall from grace for the former BBC presenter, who was once one of the country's most trusted broadcasters. The judge told him his reputation was now in tatters. Well, Edwards was handed down a 6-month suspended jail term. We'll be joined by a criminal barrister to talk through that sentencing. And we'll be hearing from the group calling for social media companies to do more to prevent these kind of images from being shared online. Also to come. Breaking news this evening, the government reaching a pay deal with junior doctors in England who are set for a 22% pay rise. We'll be joined by one of the chairs of the BMA's Junior Doctors Committee. Plus, how worried should we be about Mpox in the UK? Our science and technology editor has been behind the scenes at the lab preparing for any potential outbreak. And fly tipping or recycling. We'll speak to the woman who has been fined £500 for leaving a piece of furniture outside her home for passers-by to take. Well, that's come and much more on the UK Tonight. You have betrayed the audiences who put their trust in you. The words of the BBC today, as Huw Edwards was sentenced to a 6-month suspended jail sentence for accessing dozens of indecent images of children. Edwards was sent the images from a convicted paedophile over WhatsApp with one of the children aged between just 7 and 9 years old. The disgraced broadcaster has avoided prison, with the judge saying he did not believe Edwards posed a risk to children and that there was a realistic prospect of rehabilitation. Our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, has our first report tonight.
He arrived at court with an overnight bag. There was a chance the best-known and now disgraced TV news presenter would be leaving here in a prison van. He seemed to stare defiantly at the cameras and reporters. Some of them were his colleagues not so long ago. A police mugshot told a different story. The look of a worried man confronted with his serious child sex crimes. The court was told Edwards paid hundreds of pounds to a young paedophile who sent him indecent images of children, some the most serious Category A. Prosecutor Ian Hope said a Category A video was sent, which is notable because the age of one of the children involved was significantly younger than in the rest of the images sent. It showed several acts between 2 children aged around 7 to 9 and 11 to 13, respectively.
Good evening. Boris Johnson has unveiled his so-called...
Edwards was already suspended by the BBC, but on full pay, by the time police found 41 indecent images on his phone's WhatsApp. He told a probation officer his crimes arose from a fixation on online sex chat, his poor mental health, use of alcohol, and a failing personal relationship.
Almost always, if not always, these cases are committed to the Crown Court for sentence, and a sexual harm prevention order is imposed to restrict the way people use internet-enabled devices. This hasn't happened in this case. It must be different for some other reason, hopefully other than the fact that he is the celebrity that he is.
The court heard that Edwards hadn't created the images, but had opened and viewed them. His barrister, Philip Evans KC, said he recognises the repugnant nature and the hurt done to those who appear in the images, and for his part in that, he apologises sincerely and makes clear he has the utmost regret. The judge told Huw Edwards his reputation was in tatters, and that, he said, like the loss of his career and the financial damage he'd suffered, was a natural consequence of his behaviour, which he'd brought on himself. The BBC said it was appalled at his crimes. Edwards had betrayed the corporation and the trust of his audience. He left court a free man. He must have been relieved it wasn't a prison van waiting for him, but he can't expect doors to be held open for him much longer.
Well, Martin is in the studio now alongside criminal defence solicitor Tim Ruston. Good evening to you both. Martin, reaction to the sentence that was handed down to Huw Edwards. No prison time, 6 months suspended. A few eyebrows were raised and the word leniency has been sort of circulating. You touch on that in your report.
Yes, more than a few eyebrows, I think. I mean, since that sentence, I've been hearing it from all directions, from people who were on the street outside court, from friends of mine, and there's a lot of chatter on social media. And there is a feeling that because of who he was, and once a national treasure not that long ago, that he may have been dealt with rather leniently. I don't know. I mean, the young paedophile who was sending him material, who's already been dealt with, pleaded guilty to more charges, and he too got a suspended prison sentence, longer, twice as long as Huw Edwards. A suspended prison sentence is still a pretty tough sentence.
What does it look like in practical terms?
Well, you know, if
people think immediately you've escaped prison.
Well, he has on the face of it, but of course, you know, if he was to reoffend, if he doesn't comply with some of the restrictions that have been put on his life, those other bits of the sentence, he could go back and find that he has to go and submit to some of that prison sentence. So that will always hang over his head through the next 2 years. So, you know, he could have got a community order. He could have been told to go and work for no money and benefit a community. But I think the judge probably felt that that the suspended sentence was a tougher sentence. And of course, you know, I'm sure Tim will tell us this as well. Prisons are full, aren't they? I mean, judges are under some pressure not to send people to
Well, you
prison.
say that, Martin, but Tim, you can pick up on this because as you've been, you know, referring to people talking to you on the street, people on social media, they're saying, hang on a second, the prisons weren't full when the government decided to make a point about the people that were rioting over the summer and they've been sent to prison. I was reading about 3 individuals today who got prison terms. So, Tim, perhaps you could explain to viewers why that is, because, again, they're saying why, for the most abhorrent of crimes, viewing child abuse images and, you know, throwing some bricks that may have missed a police officer, why the 2 sentences totally different? It doesn't add up to people watching.
I think it can seem that way at first blush, but I think when you look at the offence itself, judges have to remain impartial and objective in terms of their considerations and cut out the sort of the social media side of things or the political side of things. Celebrity, some of which may unfortunately have come into the sentencing for the riots, for instance, or even the climate change protesters. So, I mean, those have certainly been criticised by a lot of lawyers. But dealing with the Huw Edwards case, the sentence, while it may seem a little bit lenient, or even, you know, people have talked about there being a 2-tier system, essentially is consistent with most sentences in this area.
So it's a typical sentence for child
It is. I think what we have to do is, law is complicated in the sense that there are a number of factors. Without boring you, essentially there is the fact that he pleaded guilty. He will be entitled to a third off any sentence for the fact that he pleaded guilty at the first opportunity, avoiding putting anybody through a court case. The prosecution won't have to present that. Equally, there was a lot of personal mitigation. He has lost, as Martin said, his life will not be the same. He has lost his career, he's lost his reputation. He will be on the sex offenders register for 7 years, with all the requirements that requires. He has to attend a sexual prevention programme, which will be laid out by probation. So this is not the end of it, and that sentence it hangs over his head. The sentence, in fact, would have been 12 months, but for the fact the judge then discounted the credit for his guilty plea and also for personal mitigation. If you remember, there was a period when he was under... he was depressed quite extensively. His wife talked about
that today, didn't we, Martin? The fact that he's been in a mental health facility.
Yes, and we think he's probably gone back there after court. I think it was said at one point that he was actually living there. And it was also said in court that one of the first things he said when he was arrested, that he told those arresting him that he had a recent history of depression and mental health problems. I mean, I thought what was really interesting was that the judge... And one of the things that people have said to me is that the judge seemed overly sympathetic towards Huw Edwards. The judge decided in his sentencing comments that he posed no risk to children, yet both the prosecution, who'd said he posed a medium risk, and the defence, even the defence, said he posed a low risk. But the judge decided that he posed no risk.
I think essentially it's a manageable risk. I think that's the way they looked at it. But clearly he had the expectation of a possible immediate custodial sentence, prison sentence, because if you see the videos, he goes in with his bag. So he's clearly prepared for going to prison, but the judge had decided to suspend it. And that's pretty consistent with what's coming out of the government now. Prisons are full, and nobody wants to see somebody going to prison for a short period of time.
Tim, I just want to ask you something that Martin picked up on in his report. This was in a magistrates court, not a Crown court, and a lot of people have pointed that out, that, you know, a crime of this nature normally goes to Crown court. It's not normally heard in a magistrates court, where we know that they can only give out lesser sentences. Up to a year, is it, magistrates court?
That's right, up to a year.
So a lot of people say, hang on a second, why didn't this go to Crown court?
It's a good question. Essentially, though, if you look at the sentencing guidelines, which is essentially the legislation and the guidance that lawyers and judges are given, this is a sentence, Martin touched on it, as low as 26 weeks community order, right up to 3 years in prison. So the judges decided that this fits the criteria for up to a year, and therefore it's accepted jurisdiction and kept the case in the magistrates court. Some people have frowned at that, but it is, again, consistent with these type of cases. I think the point to bear in mind is he received images. I think the way it's been described is slightly misleading. He doesn't actually make any images, he's actually received them.
But he possessed and he viewed them.
That's right, but that is, for instance, had he distributed images or even at the extreme scale made images, this would be a very different situation and he will almost certainly have gone to prison. OK,
well, listening to all of what you've had to say, Tim, because you've explained the legal aspect of this, because, you know, this is an emotional subject for many people, the nature of this crime, and somebody who has been seen in the UK as one of the most respected and trusted broadcasters. I want to bring in, from Cambridge, Dan Sexton, who's the Chief Technical Officer at the Internet Watch Foundation. Dan, I know you were listening to what Tim had to say closely there, because there has been eyebrows raised, upset, anger, whatever you want to call it, at the fact that this was a 6-month suspended jail term, not a prison term. What have you made of the sentencing of Huw Edwards today?
Well, any sentencing, I would hope, should be, as the case of most sentencing, a deterrent from other people committing these crimes. Regardless of whether it is or not, my concern is, although the focus has been on the two people sharing the imagery, there's been very little discussion about the fact that it is a technology-facilitated crime. So what is the platform doing to prevent that happening again? What responsibilities does the platform have to stop their platform being used to commit these sorts of crimes against children?
Because, Dan, we're not talking about the dark web here, are we? We're talking about WhatsApp, owned by Meta. We all know Meta, they own Facebook. And we all have WhatsApp on our phones. And, you know, this is shared so easily. I mean, you know, I lose count of the times I've sat in the studio and talked about police officers, for example, on WhatsApp groups sending awful imagery. You know, Martin knows these stories only too well. So that's the interesting point here, isn't it? That it's so easy to do. It's such an awful crime, and it's so easy to do.
It is, and this is, if we get a combination of what appears to people believe is a lenient sentence that reduces that preventative, but, you know, if there's no fear of doing it, the thing is, if there's no fear of being caught. So you're having this crime that's happening, it's in everyone's phone, it's very available there, you can commit this crime, you can share this imagery. If you're low risk of getting caught, there's low risk of stopping it, preventing it happening, and low punishment, you're creating that perfect circle that's only going to make this sort of thing happen again. It's going to happen again. And at the moment, I don't know what's stopping it happening right now on that platform with even the same imagery of those same victims that could be being circulated right now. Yeah,
that's the point, isn't it? What have Meta said about this? Because WhatsApp, we know it's encrypted. There are data issues, personal data issues, security issues involved in this. But as you said, this seems to be going on quite readily.
It is, and it frustratingly for me, is my responsibility for using technology to prevent and help children, prevent the distribution and sharing of child sexual abuses. This is an easy problem to solve at the basic level. All we're saying is you shouldn't let people upload images, known images of children being sexually abused onto your platforms. This is not a new thing. This is a problem that really was effectively solved 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago. It's that some platforms are choosing not to do it. So it's lack of content moderation. It's just basic content moderation. We're looking for a safe, secure, private system, but a system that is safe to prevent and cannot be used for misuse like this.
Dan, this is a difficult question, but I feel like you might have some idea of the answer. What's the scale of this problem? Because as I said, WhatsApp encrypted, it's a private messaging service for people. Meta don't go into people's personal data. They certainly don't let, the police into it and things like that. What is the scale of this problem? And I'm talking about people on WhatsApp sharing child abuse imagery.
The choice is we just don't know, and that's by design. So WhatsApp's been in the news, the Huw Edwards. My understanding is this was accidental. This was not because WhatsApp knew this was happening. It's through chance that this was discovered. How many other people are using the platform? And what steps are the company doing to stop it? We've seen Telegram in the news in the same way for the same sorts of crimes. And again, there's not been that proactive measure to prevent it. And what's happening on other services. So we're increasingly seeing platforms adopt, particularly this type of encryption, which actually prevents them, or so they say, prevents them from taking proactive measures to prevent distribution of child sexual abuse material. Really what we're talking technologically is no different to stopping a virus or something. These are things that you expect from platforms, is to protect their users. And it's baffling, actually, that these things are not being deployed across all of these systems.
It's a depressing picture. Tim, what kind of message did today send out to those who are affected by child abuse imagery? Because, yes, we can talk about Huw Edwards as much as we want, but those children, those images, that is a long-lasting effect. Their lives ruined. Huw Edwards' life is ruined, yes, but these children, I just wonder, and a lot of people have been messaging me this question, I just wonder what kind of message it sends to those who are distributing these images, because it looks like the law isn't taking this seriously. Is that the case? Because
I think it's always a difficult topic. And as a father myself, it's always challenging to balance professional views against what you may feel personally. The law basically is set out, and it is quite stringent in some of these cases. I think one point that hasn't come out is the number of images, whilst it looks like a lot, 41, was actually quite a low number. We've seen cases with thousands of images. So, and technology is important because there are software now which can literally hoover up these type of images if that's what people are looking for, particularly from the dark web. The reality is the law is set in accordance with what the government can handle. There is a shortage of prison spaces. Had he received, for instance, a 6-month sentence to serve immediately, he would have only served 3 months of that. So the reality is, and my understanding is that there were concerns about his health, about his safety, had he gone to prison for a short period, particularly facing these type of charges. So I think in the circumstances, this is the right decision. I know it's difficult perhaps to justify that, but the reality is the judge followed the legislation, applied all the factors. He's a man of good character. He's never been in this situation before. He's lost his career. He's lost everything. His reputation's in tatters. And as a result, I think all of those factors were taken into account by the judge in coming to this decision.
OK, Tim Ruston, thank you. Martin Brunt as well, who's been covering this story for us today, and Dan Sexton from the Internet Watch Foundation. Thank you for contributing to this story this evening. Well, that story's sure to feature in tomorrow's newspapers on the front pages, I would imagine, as well. Extended press preview coming your way at 10:30 tonight. Tonight's news and tomorrow's headlines. Joining us, the political editors of both The Sun and The Guardian, Harry Cole and Pippa Crerar. Now, some breaking news that's come into us within the last hour or so. Junior doctors in England voting to accept a pay deal with the government. They are set for a 22% pay rise. I'm joined now from Manchester by Dr Vivek Trivedi, co-chair of the BMA Junior Doctors Committee. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and react to this breaking news. Your reaction?
So this marks a step forwards. Doctors have had our pay cut in real terms over the last 15 years, and this turns the tide on that. It's important to note that this does not fully restore our pay, and doctors are still paid less than they were in real terms than in 2008. But it shows that we were never expecting that restoration to happen in one go. And as long as this journey continues, as we've heard from Mr. Streeting, as he wants it to, then this could mark the change between the relationship between doctors and the government. But that must be held true. And if it doesn't, then the government will find doctors back in dispute if they come off that trajectory.
So you're not done yet in terms of pay. The fight continues in some way, shape or form. It's just paused for now. You talk about the doctor's relationship with the government. What about the doctor's relationship with the NHS? Because, yes, you are fighting for decent pay for the job you do, but, you know, listening to the report that was out about the NHS just last week, the doctors themselves are having a tough time in the NHS, a difficult relationship there. How will this help?
What doctors have wanted throughout this whole period is to be valued so that they can keep their colleagues here rather than them fleeing to other places like Australia, Canada and New Zealand. There's been so much talk about reform to our healthcare system, which definitely needs to happen. We're still working in archaic, outdated systems, but we need enough staff and we need a credible workforce to do that. And for that to happen, we need an employer to value that staff. And that's all we've been asking for. We need to pay our doctors appropriately, pay all of our healthcare staff appropriately. And what that means is reversing the pay cuts that we've been inflicted over the past 15 years so that we can go back to treating patients in a timely manner, in an effective way, as we once were able to do.
And it sounds like you're going to have to change the name of your committee because as part of these negotiations with the government, junior doctors across the UK will no longer be junior doctors. They'll be known as resident doctors. Because I must admit, when we've covered this story, it has caused some confusion amongst viewers if they don't really know the structure and the hierarchy of the medical profession. Why was that important to doctors?
For the reasons that you've just described, a junior doctor, as it stands, could be anybody from the first year after graduating from medical school, which is 5 to 6 years of university, all the way up to someone who's been working for 10, sometimes even longer years. These are people who are doing complex surgeries like brain surgery, heart surgery. They're seeing patients in complex cancer clinics, for example, treating patients on intensive care. Nothing they do is junior. And so moving to a term which much more reflects their expertise is something to help show their value to the outside world.
And just a final word about how some of your members have reacted to this news. It's been hard and long fought for.
Well, there's been a split opinion, as you can see. Whilst the majority have accepted this deal, there is a large cohort who said it wasn't good enough for them because ultimately all doctors want is to be valued as they once were in 2008. And the government has promised things in the past, which has unfortunately not materialized. And so promises don't hold much value unless there's credibility behind them. This is a chance for the government to come true with their promises in the years to come. Mr. Streeting wants to restore confidence in the pay review body to continue our journey to fair pay. And I hope that happens, because if that does, then doctors don't need to go into dispute and strike again over pay ever. But if those processes and systems don't transpire and don't instill the confidence that he's hoping, then doctors will be back in dispute.
Dr Vivek Trivedi, BMA Junior Doctors Committee co-chair, thank you for your time this evening reacting to that breaking news that junior doctors, now known as resident doctors, from this month in England have voted to accept the pay offer of 22%. Thank you. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, Sky News goes inside the lab where health officials are planning for an Mpox outbreak.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? It's from Liz. She wants to know, why is there still no sign of the Labour Party electing a woman as leader?
It's sort of embarrassing. You know, it takes a very strong man to be leader, but it takes an even stronger man to support a woman for leader.
If you want to be mean to politicians, like, crack on. The activists that go out and make elections happen, I kind of feel like just don't be horrible to them. Be polite to them in the same way that they're polite to you.
Keir Starmer has got us into government with a big majority. He was completely clear before the election that he wasn't going to be able to do the two-child benefit policy, but I wouldn't be surprised if it isn't an early thing that comes along.
I went up to Gordon Brown and said, hello? No, yes, where is it? I said, found all these Tory candidates breaking land. Let me see it. This is brilliant.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky's West of England correspondent.
I'm Katie Spencer and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent. We help you to understand the world with us.
I'm Adam Parsons, I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world.
I'm Lisa Dowd and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
The inquiry into the deaths of mental health patients in Essex heard today from parents whose children died during or after NHS treatment. The inquiry will look at almost a quarter of a century of care in Essex, and its chair says its scope will be significantly in excess of the 2,000 deaths it was previously expected to consider. Let's bring in Becky Johnson, who has put together a report on this today. I was reading about this early, Becky, and it's hard to get your head around the numbers involved in this. The scale of this is huge.
It's absolutely harrowing. So initially, when this inquiry began, we thought it was looking at around 2,000 deaths of mental health patients over around a 24-year period. But the chair of the inquiry has already said she thinks the number will be significantly in excess of that. She says it's shocking that we may actually never know the full number of deaths. So these are patients who died while either inpatients on mental health wards or within 3 months of discharge. And the stories, the families, it is just unbearable, the stories that they tell about the kind of care that their loved ones received or indeed didn't receive. This inquiry is not just looking at neglect, it's looking at serious allegations of abuse of vulnerable patients. And we've been speaking to some of the families who were at the inquiry today, and this is what they were telling us.
I want to see her beautiful face as a memory, but I don't. I see that last image.
It was Sam who discovered her sister after she'd taken her own life. Paula Peretti was 46. She'd been in hospital weeks earlier, but was sent home.
She started having a panic attack. She couldn't breathe. They dropped her bags at my feet and said, "You've got to take her home, we need the bed." I said, "Can you not see she's having a panic attack?" And they said, "Sorry, but we need the bed."
Do you think if she'd had the care that she was begging for, she'd still be alive today?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Paula is one of thousands of mental health patients in Essex whose deaths are being investigated by a public inquiry. Today, Sam was among the families here to share memories and detail how their loved ones were failed. Liam Brennan died, aged 29.
We were desperate for help, which is why we turned to the NHS for the answers we could not find for ourselves. No parents like us should have to bury their child.
This was Abby Smith, who had autism. Her mother shared these videos from just days before she took her own life.
It seems totally unfair that you had to die in order to be safe and at peace when you should have been supported to to achieve this when you were alive.
Then Sam described the impact of her loss.
Our lives changed forever on the day she died, 6th of January 2022. I was so tired that I ended up sleeping longer, and I missed a phone call and missed a text from Paula. The text from Paula said, "Thank you for being part of my life."
These are the first families to speak, but there'll be many, many more coming here to share their grief, to fight for better care for society's most vulnerable.
Becky, speaking up for their loved ones, because these are families who want to tell their loved ones' stories. They want to show the inquiry who they were and what they've lost, because, you know, it's all very well and good reading their story in black and white, but these are real lives, real people that, you know, were dismissed because of the term mental health, which it should be the exact opposite.
And that's exactly what this phase of the inquiry is about. It's about the families being able to give a voice to the loved ones that they lost. And as Sam, who you saw in my report, said to me, she said, you know, the people that died, they were sisters, they were daughters, they were husbands, they were fathers. They were people who were loved by their families, who just happened to be suffering with their mental health. And the families believed that, you know, these patients were not treated properly because people thought, well, if they complain, they won't be believed. They'll just be seen as people with mental illness. They'll be ignored. They'll be forgotten. And they believed that's why the standard of care they received just simply wasn't good enough, and in some cases was abusive.
This relates to Essex, NHS care in Essex. But what are we looking at nationally here in terms of similar problems and some good to come out of this inquiry, recommendations?
Well, the families in Essex have fought for years to get to the point of this public inquiry. Years and years. I mean, the inquiry is looking at a 24-year period. But already these families and their lawyers are being contacted by families around the country saying that their loved ones are suffering this kind of abuse, this kind of poor care in hospitals around the country. And the chair of the inquiry has already made it clear that although the inquiry is looking at the deaths of patients in Essex, its recommendations will be national. They'll be made while the inquiry is ongoing. And if she sees evidence of criminality or evidence that poor care is ongoing, she won't hesitate to make recommendations or refer matters to the relevant authorities immediately.
OK, Becky, thank you. Becky will continue to follow this inquiry, and we'll bring you the latest here on Sky News on the UK Tonight as and when we get it. Becky, thank you. But if you've been affected by anything that Becky and I have been discussing there, you can contact the Samaritans. Call 116123, or you can email the Samaritans, joe@samaritans.org. The UK has ordered more than 150,000 doses of Mpox vaccine to ensure that the most vulnerable people could be vaccinated in the event of an outbreak. Health officials have released details of their planning for an outbreak, saying small clusters of cases is the most likely scenario, but they are preparing for community transmission. Well, today, Sky News was given access to the lab where those preparations are underway to see firsthand the testing apparatus that officials hope they never have to use. Our science editor, Tom Clark, has this report.
The staff in this lab are preparing machines they hope they'll never have to use. The UK Health Security Agency's facility in Porton Down is gearing up to test thousands of cases of Mpox virus every day. They're routinely testing for a previous strain of Mpox that's been circulating since 2022. But a dangerous new outbreak in Central Africa of an Mpox strain called clade 1b means they need to be prepared.
So upstairs, as we speak, they'll be doing assays for Mpox. We're getting 20 to 30 samples a day, and elsewhere in the country. But then, if we did see an outbreak here, when the demand for testing went up, we'd switch to these larger platforms, which have the ability to do thousands of samples a day, both here and elsewhere. So it's that ability to quickly escalate testing to a suitable scale is the key.
The government has just purchased an additional 150,000 doses of Mpox vaccine in preparation for the expected arrival of clade 1b. In addition, health authorities are preparing for 3 possible scenarios if Mpox makes its way here. The first scenario assumes the new strain is less infectious, leading to small, isolated clusters of cases. In scenario B, virus spreads like it did in the 2022 outbreak, affecting high-contact groups like gay and bisexual men. However, targeted vaccination and testing prevents wider spread. The The third most serious scenario envisions a much more infectious virus spreading through touch or possibly the air. Outbreaks in schools, care homes, hospitals and prisons could result. Widespread vaccination prioritising the most vulnerable would be required. At the moment, authorities believe the first two scenarios are most likely, but they can't yet rule out the third. Which one it is depends on learning more about the virus. When a sample of the new outbreak strain of Mpox comes here to Porton Down, it'll go straight into this level 3 containment lab because it's still a live virus. But one of the first jobs of this facility would be to grow more of it so that other scientists working here can have the samples they need to answer urgent questions like how much more dangerous this virus is and how well our existing vaccines are going to protect against it. In the absence of a UK case, scientists here are waiting for a sample of the virus this week from international collaborators. However, they might not have to wait long for a UK case of the new Mpox virus to arrive all by itself. Tom Clark, Sky News, Porton Down, Wiltshire.
Still to come on the UK tonight, a £500 fine for fly tipping for the woman trying to do a favour for a neighbour. I'll speak to her after the break. Now, if you're in a community Facebook group, you'll have definitely seen posts from people giving away furniture, or you'd have walked past a house where something has been left out for others to take away. I did that just this morning. It's pretty much first come, first served. Well, a woman from Bournemouth did that, and then she was shocked when she got a visit from the council and a fine of £500 for fly tipping. Well, she is Isabel Pepin, and she joins me now. Isabel, good evening to you. Thank you for coming on to tell us your story, because as I've referenced there, so many people will have done this without a second thought. They see it as giving away something they don't want, recycling, being green. Is that what you thought?
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought. And it's been sort of common practice in our town of Southbourne since I've lived here, which is the last 12 years. So when I did receive a fine for £500, I was really shocked.
And this is something you've done before, right? And you've never got into trouble for it?
I've done it many times, yeah. And I've also benefited from my neighbours leaving items out for me as well.
So what exactly happened? What was it you left outside, and what happened after that?
It was an IKEA Trofast cabinet that was originally in my son's room with toys in it.
Quite a big item then.
I'd say it was medium-sized, but yeah, I mean, it's not tiny. It was up against my front wall, and there's still room for people to walk past on the pavement. It was up against my front wall, which is where I normally leave items for the local community. And yeah, after 5 days, a officer came and knocked on our door. I wasn't in at the time. It was my housemate that answered this particular knock, and they said there was a problem with the cabinet being there. So it was immediately moved back onto my property, and then I disposed of it. I thought that was the last of it. I was very surprised when 3 weeks later I got a knock on the door with a man with an enforcement camera on his chest telling me that he was filming me. And that he read the caution speech to me, so that was very nerve-wracking. And then issued me with a £500 fine for fly tipping.
So it'd been there for 5 days, the council spotted it, and then they decided that you fly tipped. And, you know, I'm sure most people watching, and yourself included, think of fly tipping as people who sort of drive somewhere with rubbish and just dump it in fields. I mean, that's the real problem, isn't it? That's what people think when they think about the problem of fly tipping. It was outside your house. They knew it was yours. They'd had a word with you about it, but they still issued you this fine. When you rang up the council to challenge it, query it, what did they say?
They said that I couldn't actually speak to them about the matter. I had to challenge it in writing. I did want to speak to someone about it, but they wouldn't speak to me at all, and just said that I had to go through the appeal process with Wise Enforcement Company, who are the third-party enforcers that Bournemouth Council are using to issue these fines.
And as you said, this goes on in your community. It certainly goes on in mine. I drove past a neighbour's house the other day and they had an assortment of children's toys in a box at the end of their driveway, which I'm sure when I drive home tonight will have gone. I mean, the council might have taken it away, but I'm sure, you know, a young mum going past with her pram would have tucked it in the bottom. What's been the reaction of your neighbours?
I've had overwhelming support, actually. As soon as I put the post onto the Southbourne Facebook group to, you know, to actually find some advice, it got overwhelming support from all of the residents saying that they've been doing this for years. They had no idea that they were fly tipping. That actually it's a nice thing to do for your community and a good way to recycle useful, unwanted items. We're all supposed to be trying to be greener, recycle, reduce, reuse, and
yeah, it's too good to throw away, right? You know, you don't need it, but
I think it's wasteful to throw away something that's still got a lot of life left in it. I think it's far better to pass it on to somebody else who's going to get a few more years' use out of it. Yeah, and just I think people have been doing this for the last decade without any idea that that could be construed as fly tipping and that they could possibly get a fine.
Yeah, I must admit I had no idea it was fly tipping.
I had no idea.
if you put it at the bottom of the driveway, I mean, you're educating everyone, but also, you know, you're educating people at a cost because you now have a £500 fine. Where are you at with the appeal? Because £500. That is a big chunk of money.
Yeah, it is a noticeable amount of money. It will make a difference to how I budget for the next couple of months, for sure. But I have got a few local councillors who actually contacted me to support me in this. And yeah, hopefully the appeal process will be successful and the fine will get dropped. What I would really like is for there to be some sort of differentiation between fly tipping and recycling unwanted household goods, just for the sake of the environment, and for everybody that doesn't feel that they're doing something beneficial for their local community by leaving out their unwanted goods. I think we need to know where we stand on this subject. And at the moment, it seems very unclear.
OK, well, listen, Isabel, thank you for coming on to talk about this, because, like I said, I had no idea, and I'm sure a lot of people who have been doing this for as long as they can remember had no idea either. So it's good to get that message across. Let us know how you get on. That's Isabel Pepin there, who has been fined for fly tipping. She was just trying to donate an unwanted cabinet from her son's room to a neighbour, just leaving it on the driveway for somebody to take. We've had a response from the councillor, from Councillor Kieran Wilson, to be specific, BCP Council's portfolio holder for housing and regulatory services. Kieran has said this: action on fly tipping is taken to ensure communities can fully enjoy the place where they live and have pride in their neighbourhood. The council is committed to tackling fly tipping and has contracted waste investigation support and enforcement to investigate offences and administer penalty notices on behalf of the council as appropriate. Officers closely monitor and manage this waste enforcement contract, which includes regular reviews and a commitment to responding promptly to any issues and concerns that may arise. Well, we will continue to speak to Isabel and see how she gets on with her appeal. Coming up on the UK Tonight, after the break, Manchester City's hearing over 115 alleged breaches of Premier League financial rules. It's got underway in London. We'll bring you the details.
Weeknights on Sky News.
This is your chance. Tell people. Welcome to the Politics Hub.
Our police force has apologised.
If you want to find out about Grimsby, you come to the docks.
I'm live in Jerusalem.
Are you not concerned that that could lead to all-out war?
Hello there, good evening. There are fears of an upsurge in violence. What's at stake here?
You are watching the press preview, a first look at the front pages as they arrive.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion that's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change. We're being crushed.
Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Well, hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Hello, welcome back. Now, the hearing into Manchester City's alleged breaches of the Premier League's financial rules got underway earlier today. The Premier League champions are facing 115 charges following a 4-year investigation. They strongly deny all of these charges. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris is here and has been following events. It is day one, and your first mission was to actually find out where this hearing was happening today.
And we did, in central London eventually. We saw the bundles of documents being dragged in, and that shows just how complex and protracted this case could be.
In terms of 115 alleged charges, just worth reminding people what it's all about. It's all to do with finances, isn't it? Which some people will switch off at, but not Manchester City fans, because this is really important for the future of the club.
Yes, these are all about the rules that mean that clubs can't just spend what they want on transfers. Now, you could 2 decades ago when Roman Abramovich just bought Chelsea, but these rules were introduced to attempt to create a more level playing field, to limit losses, to stop huge debts being accumulated. The problem for Manchester City was the rules came in just after they'd had their big takeover by Abu Dhabi. That was in 2008, and it's from 2009 onwards that these charges relate to right up to 2023. The allegations are effectively they provided misleading information to the Premier League about their income from sponsorships and related parties. Now, we don't know the specifics of this part of the case, but we have seen from previous investigations, like from the European governing body UEFA, that the allegation is they effectively inflated sponsorship income from companies in the United Arab Emirates linked to their owner, Sheikh Mansour, who's now vice president of the UAE, to get paid more to be able to funnel that cash into player signings. And they're also accused of having a potential extra pay on the side for a manager and for providing generally misleading information.
There's a lot in there. It's been a 4-year investigation. The hearing has just started. How long might that last? Because, of course, we're into the new season now, aren't we? And, you know, what bearing will it have on City's season?
Well, Pep Guardiola, the manager, said he hoped for a quick resolution to all this. One of the reasons it's not been resolved so speedily is because, amongst the charges, as the Premier League allege, is the club has been charged with not cooperating. They went to court a few years ago to try to stop handing over documents and to block this case entirely. But it will be very lengthy. We might not get a verdict into next year. Then there could be all sorts of appeals. And to make it even more complex, is a completely separate case that City have launched against the Premier League in recent months, which is to claim that they shouldn't be telling them how much their sponsorship should be worth if they're from companies in the UAE. They should be able to receive as much income as they want. And at the heart of all this, City are the Premier League's current most successful team. They've won 8 titles since 2012. They're going for 5 in a row. They've had a blistering start to the season, winning every game. And Erling Haaland on fire with so many goals. And, of course, they are a successful team, a great group of players. This is all about how they assembled the squad and whether it was legitimate, the spending.
Well, Rob,
and City do say they have an irrefutable body of evidence to contest the case.
Yeah, it's not going to be settled quickly, is it? I think we can surmise that. Rob, thank you. We're going to take you from the Premier League and big money. We're going to take you now to League One and a bit of showbiz. There is a huge game in League One happening right now. So much so that David Beckham didn't want to miss it. These are scenes at St Andrews, Birmingham, of course, now co-owned by NFL legend Tom Brady. They're up against Wrexham, who are owned by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. Have I said that right? I watched the Disney series and I still can't say it right. Rob McElhenney?
Rob McElhenney, yeah.
Yeah, we'll go with Rob McElhenney. I'm sure I'll get corrected. Well, look, David Beckham sneaked in just in time. There he is getting a round of applause. I think that's his son with him. Oh, and Gary Neville. He gets everywhere, doesn't he, Gary Neville?
There is another link, by the way, to our previous story. Gary Cook is the chief executive of Birmingham City. He was the chief executive of Manchester City at the time of the Abu Dhabi takeover.
I knew you'd make it work, Rob. I knew you'd make it work.
So all strands do link together. But, yeah, this is how even down in League One, 3rd tier, the celebrity stardust is there. Birmingham trying to rise back up. Wrexham on this incredible ascent from the non-league with the Hollywood backing. And Tom Brady, an NFL great, one of the potentially very minority, but still an investor at Birmingham, which is trying to mount a revival of its own.
And it's 1-1 at the moment, in case you're interested. Is that right? I think it's 1-1. Yes, it is, correct. All right, Rob, thank you very much. There you go, an update on some of the sports news that's around today. Right, we are now going to take you across the Atlantic to Florida. We are expecting an update from the FBI this evening. That's after the assassination attempt against Donald Trump yesterday. We can bring in our US correspondent, Mark Stone, who's been following this story all day for us here on Sky News. He is live in Palm Beach, Florida. So, Mark, we're expecting an update, and things have moved really quickly today.
Hi, SJ. Yeah, an extraordinary day after an extraordinary afternoon yesterday, not far from here at Trump International Golf Course. It's about a 10-minute drive from where we are at Mar-a-Lago, Trump's resort here in West Palm Beach. It was yesterday afternoon when Donald Trump was playing golf at his golf club when the Secret Service, a hole ahead of him in a security bubble, spotted a rifle poking through the perimeter fence of the golf club. Shots were fired, we think only by the Secret Service agents. A car chase then ensued and a man was arrested, and we've seen body cam footage of that man being arrested. His name is Ryan Ruth. He is from North Carolina. And he is the man now at the centre of this second apparent assassination attempt against Donald Trump. That is how the FBI, who are leading the investigation, are describing it. And within the next few minutes or so, we should get an update from the FBI, from the Southern District of Florida U.S. Attorney as well, from the acting director of the U.S. Secret Service, who has been here in Mar-a-Lago today meeting Donald Trump, and from the sheriff from the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. So 4 different departments, all bringing what they have learnt over the past 24 hours together, sharing it with us, sharing more details about what happened yesterday, how that man was able to get so close to Donald Trump. Who is he? What is his background? It's clear from social media posts and interviews that he's done over the course of the past few years that he had a particular interest in Ukraine, in Russia, in fighting for Ukraine in that war. Indeed, he was filmed and interviewed in Kyiv a couple of years ago. An interest, too, in the tensions between China and Taiwan. His politics appears to have shifted. In 2016, a post by him suggests that he voted for Donald Trump, but then has shifted to the left. So all of this will inform the investigators as they paint a picture which hopefully they'll share with us over the coming minutes.
Yeah, Mark, we're standing by for that. We'll bring it to you live here on Sky News as soon as it starts. The FBI telling us what they know about this second assassination attempt in a matter of weeks, Mark, against President Donald Trump, the former president of the United States. Can you just give us a flavour of the reaction there in the US to this attempt, this latest attempt?
I think speechless. I mean, I think it's an extraordinary time to report on America, and it is quite clear that this country is gobsmacked by what has happened, that this could happen again. I think everyone wants answers. There are many who want calm, less rhetoric, but there is an awful lot of less rhetoric right now.
OK, Mark, thank you. Mark Stone monitoring events for us in Palm Springs in Florida. That FBI news conference due to get underway shortly. Live pictures there. We are standing by. Stay with us. That's coming up after the break.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Why only in America? People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.